All right, beautiful. Here we are with Trevon Clow and Jeff Mecredy on another installment of the Catalyst podcast. Last time we discussed kind of a variety of different things, laid the foundation about what coaching is, and kind of got into describing what it looks like as we are escaping survival jail, and also discussing prioritizing well-being in our careers and professions. So at the end of the last podcast, we were going to describe a little bit more about goals and aspirations. So that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to talking to you about this. I don't think I've ever really, I know motivation, I know some of those things. I don't think I've ever really talked about goals. So I'm interested to pick your brain about that because I know that's a big part of what you do.
For sure. Yeah. Goals are pretty fundamental, integral as far as behavior modification, which is a big fancy word for the way I get better at what I'm doing. And that usually is the objective. After we go ahead and scope what the needs are, we're going to set a goal. And the question is, what's a good goal? And what is a not very good or a bad goal? When is a goal counterproductive? Because I think that we've all actually probably experienced that and maybe didn't realize it.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of have this. I, I'm looking forward to this because I want to think more deeply about goals because I've been in so many meetings with so much SWOT analysis, so much just wasted time, words in order somewhere, and then and it, I don't know, I just have a negative connotation around a general idea of goals. And so when I think about what a goal is for, I go, oh, it's another way of saying, oh, what do I want?
Okay. Yeah.
That concept I like, you
Hmm.
know, motivation, intrinsic interest. We talked about curiosity, those things. Those are all like related to goals, but there's something, I don't know, what is it that I kind of go, got to do goal setting. You know, it for some
Is
reason it doesn't feel meaningful to me. What do you think that is?
Well, I mean, the difference between a desire and a goal, I suppose, is actually taking that desire to be extrinsic. It's taking it out of ourselves, and it's the way that we are now interacting with the world around our desire. And I think that's where things get pretty hairy and, potentially boring in meetings and things like that as well. But it's our pursuit of the goal that I think can give us a really bad taste in our mouth. It only takes one or two real good, challenging goal experiences before all of a sudden it's, hey, I take my word seriously. I don't want to promise I'm going to do that. I don't know what I'm signing up for here. People, maybe want to back away from setting goals after a bad experience.
Yeah, how do you think goals relate to like our leadership conversation last time? So leader sets direction, among other things. But
Hmm.
how do you think goals relate to that?
That's a good question. So as far as a really meaningful goal and scoping what a good goal is, which is certainly going to be the goal of a good leader, is setting a direction and then creating a manageable pathway forward. The most important thing is to connect it to a really, really compelling and meaningful why. It's not so much just, I want to go to Italy or I want to be a VP. Well, why? What is meaningful about that? Is it that there was a challenging professor or maybe someone in your life when you were growing up that you want to emulate or live up to, or that you promised that you would do this, or you feel that you would be able to express your talents best at a certain level or position, or something like that, rather than just, I want to be a VP because I need to grow. That kind of emotional anchoring is not strong enough to compel the team to move forward. So I think that when a leader is helping to set good goals from an agenda, connecting it to a compelling why that actually moves the needle for everyone on the team is, from my view, perhaps where it falls short most often.
Yeah, I like the idea of there's a why, but I guess I think there should be concepts underneath this. I think jumping to the idea of a goal at the end ignores a lot.
Hmm.
Um, so motivation, I think generally people do things for three reasons: because they want something, because they enjoy it, or to avoid something bad from happening.
Hmm.
And so, I think if people go up and go, let's make goals, where's that motivation coming from? And the why kind of fixes that a little bit, I think. Well, yeah, why am I doing this? But I
Hmm.
think even, for the folks you're working with, last time you said most of your work is with people who are pivoting or promoting.
Hmm. Right. Yeah.
And I thought, oh, they have some freedom to decide their own direction. And defaulting the idea that I need to be my best and I need to be goal centered. And I don't know. I think that misses a lot. I think that's part of the problem out there. I think that's why people get really upset. It's like if I think of like a sales goal, well, that's external pressure. That
The
hurts.
definition of that kind of goal, especially.
Yeah, if we think about the reasons people do things, that's trying to avoid something bad from happening.
Hmm.
And so I don't know. Anxiety is a pretty bad motivator. And so I guess maybe the question is when does a goal become an anxiety creator?
Hmm. Hmm. Excellent. Apropos, truly. And then we tell ourselves, well, if I have anxiety, actually I'm growing. So this is productive. This is a challenge. This is not a threat. But indeed, sometimes we do set ourselves up with a goal that just creates anxiety. And well, that it can be a lot of different reasons, certainly. But my first, as I had mentioned, was aligning to the purpose. And the second is, are we actually in love with the process of pursuing the goal? Or are we in love with the outcome? Because they're very different things. And from what I've read, the efficacy of goal achievement is not so good if we just focus on the outcome. If I just want to lose 50 pounds and I think about it every day and I write that on my wall, that's very different than becoming completely focused on working out 6 days a week and really invested in my exercise community and really excited about, my food blog or whatever it is that's helping me with my diet. So I think that over focus on the outcome and lack of connection to the value is the primary driver of anxiety behind the goal.
Yeah, that I think if you jump to the end and know where you want to land, you kind of screw up the process. And I wonder if there's got to be like steps in reevaluation along the way,
Hmm.
a, a compass more than an endpoint.
The goal being kind of a destination, whereas what I hear of you promoting is a more of a journey perspective.
I think so. What's a good day? Let's start with a good day.
Hmm.
And maybe that heads in the direction that can show me what my goals should be is what's a good day.
Right, right.
And the goals should come from that. I think if we pick up a bad compass and we know exactly where we're supposed to go and the time we're supposed to be there, well then that makes the trip all stressed out.
The whole trip. Absolutely.
Nothing but behind or ahead.
Well, and that also aligns with perhaps when we're goal setting, when we're taking our desires, our wants, our definition of a good day, there is the possibility that we extrapolate to set our objective in the wrong way and we optimize for the wrong data point. It
Yeah.
could be, I want to make 500 grand a year, when actually it's, I want to have enough money to have free time to spend with my family. Those are very different goals, but they could be optimized in a similar way up to a certain point. And so I think that when we set our goals, taking a moment to really truly consider if that is what we want.
Yeah, and I think it's also kind of okay to say, and I want to have less. I want to not wake up to an alarm clock. I want to not have a commute. I want to work 15 hours a week because I've got better things to do. It's funny how like we default to ambition,
Hmm.
and I think that's part of my unsettled nature to it too. Is there's sort of this be the best you can be built in thing, and I think there's a shift in culture. I think people who are pivoting and promoting they're ready for a different phase of life, and that may be freedom's pretty important. Jobs don't give us freedom.
Freedom's also kind of scary
Absolutely. What do you think?
because we have arrived. We have arrived, and then we maybe are expected to be happy.
Yeah.
Whereas being in the process of attainment and improvement of goal setting keeps us occupied, but it also can indicate that we are not complete, that we are not good, that we are not ready simply by doing that. So I really appreciate your counterpoint to the entire, framework of goal setting. Say, setting the goals could actually make us unhappy in and of itself, in some ways.
Okay, so I think that's interesting. If we sit down with goal setting, and let's say the first part of the conversation is when you're happy and you look around, what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
And that's different than I want to never have to worry about money, because we know people just kind of adapt, and whatever the budget is, we tend to get really close to the max.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know, there's a cart and a horse thing in terms of enjoyment of life and happiness that seems to be going on out there. The other thing I sort of sense that with the shakeup in AI, and there's a lot of kind of higher end jobs, everybody's really nervous about what's going to disappear. I've spent my life setting goals and preparing for something so that I can feel financially secure and I can have more shit than the people around me, and the people around me can respect me, and then I don't get kicked out of the tribe because now I have value, and it's anxiety being outside of the group. And I sense a lot of people stepping back going, wait, what is a job?
Mm.
What is that? And if I had a choice, what would my goals be like every day? Would I do something till I'm done doing it and the curiosity's gone? Would I have things that I need to accomplish because I won't do it otherwise?
A way we can ask ourselves this is, if all of the opportunities include the exact same amount of compensation, including not going to work or doing something else, what do I truly want to do? And it takes a while to remove what I like to call our mental furniture enough to see the full scope of, what our desires are, and what the fears that might be holding us back from actually acknowledging that comment about the alarm in the commute actually sounds pretty nice.
Yeah. You know, another question that comes to mind is the idea that when you're working your ass off and you're enjoying it, the
Mhm.
time disappears. What's
Yes.
that look like? Tell me about that. And I wonder if like goals about how we want to spend our days don't. There's nothing wrong with working our ass off. It's great. In fact, we don't do well if we don't have things that we're not really invested and passionate about. Last time we talked about
Mhm.
curiosity and creativity, um, and so I also think one of the things people are asking that have freedom is how can how can I invest myself in things that I'm passionate about, that I like, that I enjoy working my ass off.
Find those things where we are in love with the process of goal attainment.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe there's a lot of discovery in there too. Maybe that's another idea. When we set goals, do we eliminate opportunities for discovery?
Well, there's definitely some popular literature out there about the downsides of setting goals, how we can go for something and completely forget all of our existing responsibilities, or maybe start to fudge the numbers a little bit so we can hit that goal. Um, or the anxiety that you already brought up. So there definitely, I think, are the other side of the coin is there.
Yeah, that's interesting. And what is your goal setting process usually?
Good question. Um, so actually, it's been kind of evolving lately, thanks to a little bit of extra reading. But I would say that at this point, what I'm looking for in my goal setting is to identify and connect my aspiration or my objective to one of my deepest values. I keep my top 10 prioritized values right next to my computer. I use it as a compass all the time. So if I'm feeling really good or really bad, I always look at that compass, and I always check it when I'm setting goals as well. So if I'm going to set a big lofty goal for myself that may take 6 months or 2 years or something like that, I'm not going to want to be anxious and fudging the numbers, the whole time. So the question is, what is it that is already on my critical path? And then also when I scope out from that, what processes am I doing in my life already that I love? And what goals can I put out in front of those processes? Instead of choosing a goal and finding a process to attain it, how about set a goal out in front of something I'm already doing?
So if we flip that around and we go, what do you think happens to people that don't set goals?
Well, you're in Florida. How is it?
It's kind of fun and people go with it, and I think it's pretty easy to get lost if we don't know where we're going.
Right.
And so that's interesting, helping people. Maybe there's just a bigger question about a goal setting process that's individualized
Okay.
rather than just sort of, here's my short term goals, here's my long term goals. It's like, well, how much room do you need around your goals? Is this like you're going to starve if you don't reach it? Or
Hmm.
is there room to wiggle and figure it out and we assess as we go?
As you mentioned earlier, that built-in expectation of reassessment periodically through the experience, whatever the segments are of reassessment, but anticipating that life will change and evolve as we pursue a goal, rather than remaining rigid and saying, if I change this goal at all, I've failed.
And what do you think about the component of what we're setting goals like for? I mean, we end up sort of doing that around jobs and around like attaining things or status or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are some other ideas around why we would that why question is? Why are we setting goals? You know, what are we
The will to power, as Nietzsche would say, right?
right?
We're going to do something, and especially in our culture, of course, I think that even if we're not trying to consume very much outside media, we're going to be scripted with ambition and the opportunity to purchase more things or have more vacations or something like that. And which completely almost distracts from what I have been calling the counterpoint perspective on goals that you've been kind of bringing up here, which I think is amazing, which is sometimes setting goals can actually be two steps back. What's wrong with the present?
Yeah, yeah. There is this belief that I can work my way out of this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So one thing I was thinking about, it's interesting. I mentioned the word status and you mentioned the word value. When I think about this stuff, humans evolved in small groups, and your participation in your group, you know, we can call it status, we can call it validation, um, importance,
Mm.
but your contribution determined your significance. And significance is something that we need to feel because for the vast majority of human history, if you had a bad season, very cold winter or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
who gets kicked out when there's not enough resources? The people with the least significance. So we're anxiously hardwired comparing ourselves to the culture, and we deeply know our significance and we know our role.
These are
And
these are traits from that we've evolved to survive as a species.
yeah, we talked about the sort of escaping survival jail and shedding those survival instincts. A huge part of our survival instincts, as it relates to goals, that's what was going through my mind,
Mm-hmm.
are based on what culture defines, and we're in a weird state in human history, right? As significance or value or status. We're
Mm-hmm.
very aware how we participate. And
Always.
so social anxiety and pressure based on the idea that we need to maximize our potential so that we can have a higher status role, so that we can have more security in our group. That's built into us. And I wonder if we're in a big cultural shift around that.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
wonder if that's changing.
I think that's really interesting because there is an entire umbrella of goals that go along with the survival instincts, the survival gene, the anxiety we feel to validate, to earn credibility, to be gainful, to provide value, to have esteem within our community. Um, so those are, under some perspectives, negative motivators. I'm afraid of a bad thing, so I will do something.
Yep.
Maybe good goals are driven by positive motivators.
What are some positive motivators?
Positive motivators, I think, are doing things for the intrinsic value themselves because you know you will enjoy it. I'm building a new garden right now. I love it. It's going to make me, wet, like tired and dirty and all these things, but it's not going to make anyone else, probably think very much different of me. It's not going to make me any money. Um, I think doing things that are, I suppose, as I've been hammering on this whole time, connected to our values. Um, and I think we can all probably look back, especially on, I don't know, I think back to education experiences. As young people, I think negative motivation is the first thing that comes out of the quiver. And a lot of us have honed our ability to deliver in life based on this negative motivation. And so it can become a little bit scary to all of a sudden say, okay, I want to still grow. I want to still have new and different meaningful experiences and learn about myself, but I want to do so with a positive motivation. And it starts to feel a little bit abstract. All of a sudden, if I'm not negatively motivated, I may do nothing forever. I don't have any practice with that.
Yep.
I think starting that positive motivation, jump-starting that. Have you ever worked with clients around negative positive motivation?
Yeah. So, in therapy, we have theories that we work from, and they're pretty comprehensive, almost philosophies of life. And so, around the 90s, they said, well, we spent a century figuring out what people who are suffering do. What are people who are doing well doing? And we're still discovering, but there were some theories around that. And so it's interesting. Solution focused therapy is really ultimately designed to trick the mind into finding the goal.
Okay.
And the mind is negative based. Like we have so many words for bad and a few words for good.
Hmm.
And it's, our mind is designed to avoid bad. And so it's a therapy that actually tricks the mind, which is hard to get the mind to do. And you got to be really stubborn with it to stay in the question of what does life look like if this problem isn't there. And so
Fascinating.
that's for moving out of bad spaces. What you're talking about, moving towards good spaces. I wonder if
Mhm.
that idea is applicable too, which is, it's the same question in a different way. um, if this were going well, what would be happening? And then of course people go, well, I wouldn't hate my job. And you go, what would you do with your job? Oh, well, I'd be excited about it. You'd be excited. You want to be excited. I'd be passionate. So you want to be passionate. Okay. So, from our field, that's an approach. It's really interesting. And I wonder what the coaching world is doing, because it does have a different goal.
It does. Yeah, absolutely. And I would say every time I think I'm learning a big new lesson this year, this is the lesson under it, which is leaning into the positive, leaning into the strengths and the good, especially in coaching. It's possible to spend 5 hours talking about why something's a problem. And sometimes we make progress, sometimes we don't. But we definitely will still feel like we have a problem emotionally, internally. We're churning because we're focusing on what's wrong. Whereas instead, of course, bringing up, just like you were describing, oh, what do you want? Let's describe the positive scenario. look at what the best 10% of this experience is. What are we grateful for? How can you achieve something new and unique in this experience, even if there are headwinds? And just taking the time to actually give it time on stage, that's the magic. To spend time visualizing in detail, in brilliant color detail, what that positive scenario looks like. And then, of
Yeah.
course, when you've got that mental state, write your goals down.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that idea that and in our language, that's the direction comes from the solution.
Okay. Love it.
So, and so I also thought about, we got a lot of data around young men,
Mm-hmm.
and they're asking this question hard. They are not accepting culture's goals for them for the most part. Not everyone, but in like data we've never seen. And then culture just surrounds them and says, you're unmotivated and and
Mm-hmm.
and that's a problem. And they're going, yeah, I kind of don't care. And so I wonder what this conversation, how that relates to them, because there are a lot of them, and they're rejecting a lot of cultural norms.
Which is probably part of the story, I think, because there is a stepping back, sounds like, from what I'm hearing here, from certain activities or responsibilities or institutions, work, another degree, get married, have kids, whatever those things might be. I would be fascinated to see what the activities are that are being chosen instead. I, backpacked in Europe for a month. I spent some time in my 20s doing a few different things and took time for myself in that way. But I have a feeling it's a little bit different than what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a Thoreau and Kerouac and Fight Club and the Big Lebowski,
All the gospels.
all the gospels. Those are manifesting themselves, and it looks directionless. And I'm not one that's going to jump up and judge it. I just think it's super interesting because we are happier when we're curious and when we're being creative, and it does feel good to work your ass off. But I don't think they want to do it for goals for anybody else. And maybe they haven't decided what their goals are, and maybe their goals are, uh, hanging out with friends, online, video games, a lot of programmers. It's interesting podcasts. There's a lot of 3-hour podcasts that are actually really detailed and scientific and whatnot that are getting millions of views. And so I'm like, yeah, these young men aren't sitting around doing nothing. They're curious. They're interested. They like knowing things. But the whole idea that I'm going to go do that for somebody else and do a bunch of stuff I don't want all day, and then go give those resources to somebody else for some reason, yeah, not doing that.
I'm curious how this compares. We're talking about a group of young men, but certainly these changes in our culture are affecting everyone who is young.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps in the same way, perhaps in different ways.
Oh, so, I think somewhere less than 40% of college entrants are men, which means women are motivated.
Mm-hmm.
2/3 of college degrees within a couple of years will be given to women.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of interesting passion and motivation around their pursuits and the things they're interested in. And the numbers around the soft sciences are going up and they're excelling. And so it's interesting. I mean, they're doing the hard sciences too,
Mm-hmm.
but yes, the motivation has shifted. Our culture has really kind of worshipped individualism, and goal setting is an individualistic process. And we're happy when we're altruistic. We're happy when we're connecting. Most of our joy comes from deep connections with other people. And I think a lot of our goal setting doesn't involve deeper connections with people, it's self improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that's I wouldn't even know how to think about doing goal setting around improving connections. And the data that's coming out that's really strong is the people who connect well. The more depth and the more connections you have, the longer you live and the better you live, period.
Hmm.
And so, I wonder if the individualism of our goal setting models, yeah, that may be moving us away from people.
Hmm. Next
So,
time,
yeah,
let's explore community because that keeps coming up as one of the primary drivers of human satisfaction in all of our conversations. Community, and I believe creativity or innovation is in there as well. So maybe we can layer on those subjects on top of our goal setting conversation next time.
how people come together to get stuff done and how we enjoy it a lot more when we're doing it with others.
That's right.